The diver had always loved the ocean. He liked the feeling of the water moving around him, the quiet that seemed to stretch endlessly, and the way the sunlight looked as it fell through the surface in dancing patterns. He had been diving for years, exploring shipwrecks, underwater caves, and abandoned docks. Today, though, felt different. He was on his way to inspect a cargo ship that had been docked for routine maintenance, but there was something about the ship that gave him an uneasy feeling. The crew whispered about strange accidents and missing cargo, stories that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. As he prepared his gear on the small boat, he checked everything carefully. His wetsuit was snug and secure, his oxygen tank full, and his flashlight charged. He ran through the checklist in his mind methodically, even as his stomach churned with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The boat slowly approached the massive cargo ship. Its hull towered above the water, gray and imposing. The water around it was calm, almost too calm, reflecting the gray sky and ripples that moved like shadows. The diver felt a shiver run down his spine, but he pushed it aside. He had work to do. Once the boat was anchored, he slipped into the water. The shock of the cold made him gasp, but he quickly adjusted to it. He kicked carefully, keeping his movement slow to avoid stirring up the sediment at the bottom. The ship's massive propeller came into view first. Even though the engines were off, it loomed there like a sleeping giant, its blades dark and smooth, glinting faintly under the water. He swam closer, running his gloved fingers over the edge to check for damage. Everything seemed normal at first, but then he noticed something unusual. There was a solid mass attached to the back of the propeller, something that didn't belong. At first, he thought it might be marine growth, like barnacles or seaweed. He had seen strange shapes like this many times before, clinging to old metal, but as he got closer, he realized it was too solid and too large to be just sea life. The shape seemed almost human-like, twisted and wedged in between the blades. A cold feeling settled in his chest, and he forced himself to breathe slowly and evenly. He had seen unusual things before, but something about this felt different. His instincts were telling him that this was not ordinary debris. He carefully adjusted his flashlight, shining it on the mass. The light revealed torn fabric, dark and grimy, tangled around the metal. The diver's heart rate quickened, but he reminded himself to stay calm. He signaled to his team above, a simple wave of his hand that indicated he had found something. He didn't speak. The sound would not carry underwater, and anyway, he didn't want to risk panicking anyone. He moved closer, using his flashlight to examine the object in more detail. It was clear now that it wasn't just a pile of debris. The shape was rigid, and parts of it seemed to resemble a human form. He could see what looked like a leg bent at an unnatural angle, twisted and pressed against the metal. There was a dark, sticky substance coating parts of it, and the diver realized with a sinking feeling that it could be blood. His mind raced. How could something like this end up here? The propeller was a dangerous place, constantly moving when the ship was in operation. It didn't make sense that a body could stay attached here for long, yet here it was, hidden in plain sight, a horrifying secret that had somehow gone unnoticed. The diver carefully documented everything with an underwater camera. He had to capture the details for the authorities and for his own records. The thought of what he might be capturing on film made him uneasy, but he knew it was necessary. This discovery was beyond anything he had experienced before. As he surfaced, gasping for air, the diver could hardly speak. His hands trembled slightly as he removed his mask and communicated with the captain and maintenance crew. The tension on the boat was palpable. The crew exchanged uneasy glances and whispers started. The diver took a moment to steady himself on the boat, his heart still pounding from the dive. The surface of the water looked calm, but he knew the darkness beneath was anything but. He glanced back at the ship, now looming like a silent giant, and tried to push aside the horror of what he had seen. But it was impossible to forget. The twisted shape, the dark fabric, the cold, lifeless mass, it all played over in his mind. He knew that the next step was critical. He had to return underwater to document everything fully and let the authorities examine it safely. The team above worked quickly, preparing ropes, cameras, and communication lines. Divers from the local authorities were on their way, but they needed the first-hand account of someone familiar with the propeller and the ship's structure. He checked his gear again, adjusting his mask, ensuring the oxygen flow was steady, and securing the flashlight to his wrist. Every movement felt heavier now. burdened by the knowledge of what awaited him below. As he slipped back into the water, the cold shock hit him immediately. He pushed through it, focusing on the task ahead. The water seemed darker this time, thicker somehow, as though it knew he was carrying a secret down into its depths. Swimming toward the propeller, he tried to keep calm, but the closer he got, the more his stomach churned. The mass had not moved, remaining wedged between the blades, yet it felt alive in a terrifying way, as if the darkness around it were waiting. He switched on his flashlight and illuminated the area, trying to see every angle without disturbing the shape. The body was mangled, twisted into an unnatural position, and the fabric clung to it in clumps. The diver's hands shook slightly as he maneuvered to get a better view. He had to capture the details, but every second he stayed close was unbearable. The water carried a faint odor that made his stomach tighten, but he forced himself to breathe steadily and remain professional. He carefully documented the twisted limbs and torn fabric, photographing and videoing everything. The diver's mind raced with questions. Who was this person? How had they ended up here, attached to the propeller? Had it been an accident or something far more sinister? He thought about the stories he had heard of missing crew members, cargo disappearing without explanation, and strange noises coming from the ship at night. The realization that this might be connected to those events sent a shiver down his spine. He had stumbled onto something much larger than a routine inspection. This was a secret that someone had gone to great lengths to hide. As he worked, the diver noticed something else, a faint shimmer near the bottom of the propeller, something that had been hidden in the shadows. Moving closer, he saw small personal items scattered around. A watch, partially covered in grime, a ring tangled in the fabric, and a few papers that had disintegrated in the water. Each item confirmed the worst fear. This was not a random accident. Someone had deliberately left the body here, using the propeller as a hiding place. The diver's chest tightened with a mix of anger and sorrow. It was horrifying to think that someone had tried to erase a life in such a cruel and calculated way. He signaled to the surface team again, using the standard hand signals for danger and discovery. The divers above began preparing to descend, knowing they would need to work together to ensure the area was properly examined. The diver stayed close to the propeller, guiding them to the location of the mass and the personal items. He moved carefully, aware that any sudden motion could shift the body or damage the fragile evidence. It was delicate work requiring both patience and courage. Each moment was a test of his focus as the reality of the scene pressed down on him. As the authorities arrived, the diver explained everything in detail. His voice was steady, but his hands continued to tremble slightly. He described the shape of the body, the twisted limbs, the dark fabric, and the small personal items scattered nearby. He recounted every detail of the propeller and the surrounding area, ensuring nothing was missed. The team listened carefully, their expressions a mix of shock and concentration. They could see the gravity of the situation and the courage it had taken for him to dive and document the scene. The diver felt a mix of relief and dread, relief that the truth was finally coming to light, and dread at the implications of what had been hidden here for so long. The investigation began immediately, with divers carefully moving around the propeller and collecting evidence. The diver assisted where he could, pointing out details he had noticed during his initial dive. As they worked, they found more items partially hidden in the crevices of the propeller. Pieces of clothing, fragments of personal documents, and even small tools that had been used to manipulate the mass. Each find added to the growing sense of horror and confirmed that this was not an accident. The ship had been a silent witness to something terrible, and the diver had uncovered it by chance. Above the water, tension grew. Crew members watched silently, some unable to look directly at the scene, others whispering theories among themselves. The diver could hear their murmurs but tried to ignore them, focusing instead on the task at hand. He thought about the families of the missing, the people who had wondered what had happened to their loved ones. He realized that his work might finally bring answers, though it would be a painful process. The responsibility weighed heavily on him, but he knew he could not ignore it. The truth needed to be revealed no matter how difficult it was. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as they worked. The diver watched as the authorities continue to their careful inspection of the propeller, every movement precise and deliberate. He stayed nearby, giving them information about angles, shadows, and details that he had noticed during his dives. The weight of what he had seen continued to press down on him. The realization that this was not an accident, that someone had deliberately tried to hide a life, made his stomach churn. He thought about the missing crew members, the rumors of accidents, and the unexplained disappearances. All of it suddenly connected in a dark, chilling way. Investigators began questioning the ship's crew. Some were cooperative, answering questions about the ship's schedule, recent routes, and any strange events that had occurred. Others seemed nervous, avoiding eye contact and giving vague answers. The diver could feel the tension rising among the crew. Whispers circulated about what had been found, but the truth remained hidden from most of them. The diver could sense the fear, the realization that someone on the ship might have known more than they were admitting. He stayed quiet, observing, noting the reactions and silently bracing himself for what might come next. The dive team returned to the water with more specialized equipment. They needed to carefully extract evidence and document the area without disturbing it. The diver guided them, showing the exact locations of personal items, fragments of fabric, and other clues. The items were collected slowly and methodically, each one revealing a bit more of the story. A small torn notebook, pages soaked and faded, suggested someone had been trying to keep records. A damaged photograph revealed a partial image of a person, their face now barely recognizable. The diver felt a pang of sorrow as he considered the lives behind these items, lives cut short or hidden in cruel secrecy. As the investigation progressed, the diver learned more about the ship's history. The vessel had been in operation for years, known for transporting various types of cargo, sometimes traveling through dangerous routes. Past maintenance teams had occasionally reported strange noises and mechanical problems near the propeller, but none had investigated thoroughly. Rumors had circulated among dock workers about smuggling and crew members disappearing, but there had never been concrete evidence, until now. The diver felt a cold realization. He had stumbled onto a pattern of secrecy and cover-ups that had gone unnoticed for far too long. He thought about the families of the missing crew members. For years they had wondered what had happened, never receiving answers. Now, with the evidence slowly being collected, there was hope that they would finally have some closure. The diver's role in uncovering this secret weighed heavily on him. He felt a mix of pride and sorrow, knowing that his discovery was important, but also that it was a reminder of how cruel life could be. The water had hidden this truth for months, maybe years, and he had been the one to reveal it. Back on the boat, the diver documented every observation in a notebook, carefully noting each item recovered, its location, and its condition. The authorities relied on his detailed descriptions to guide further investigations. Every detail mattered. A loose screw here, a piece of fabric there, a fragment of metal twisted in an unusual way. They all contributed to the growing understanding of what had occurred. The diver knew that even the smallest observation could be significant in piecing together the events that had led to the tragedy. The diver also noticed the emotional toll on the crew. Some appeared visibly shaken, glancing nervously at each other as if trying to guess who might be responsible. Others were silent, refusing to discuss anything. The diver understood their fear. He had been in dangerous and tense situations before, but nothing had ever felt like this. The realization that someone had deliberately hidden a body, possibly for months, was terrifying. It changed the way he viewed the ship, the crew, and the very water beneath him. The calm surface no longer felt safe or familiar. The ocean, which had once been a place of discovery and wonder, now seemed like a hiding place for terrible secrets. Investigators began piecing together the timeline. The diver provided insight based on his dives, describing the state of the body and the surrounding environment. Based on his observations, they could estimate how long the mass had been attached to the propeller. Each detail added to the understanding of the incident and the possible causes. The diver realized that this investigation could finally provide answers to questions that had lingered for years. The thought of bringing some measure of justice or closure to families offered a small comfort amid the horror. While waiting for further dives, the diver reflected on the moments when he first noticed the mass. The initial shock, the struggle to remain calm, and the process of documenting the evidence, all of it replayed in his mind. He thought about the courage it had taken to face the unknown, to dive into cold, dark water with the knowledge that something was wrong. He realized that this experience had changed him. He had always been brave in his work, but this was different. This was confronting human cruelty hidden beneath the surface, a reminder that the diver prepared for another dive, This time with a deeper sense of urgency. The authorities had asked him to assist in a more detailed inspection of the propeller and the surrounding hull. He checked his gear carefully, making sure everything was secure and functioning. The water was colder than before and the darkness beneath seemed heavier. He knew the task ahead was not just physically challenging, but emotionally draining as well. Still, he reminded himself of the importance of what they were uncovering. Each dive was a step closer to understanding the full truth. As he descended, memories of the previous dives resurfaced. The first time he had seen the twisted mass attached to the propeller, he had felt shock, fear, and disbelief all at once. Now, equipped with more knowledge and experience from the previous inspections, he moved with careful precision. The propeller loomed above him, and he could see the grim details more clearly. Torn fabric, twisted limbs, and the dark, cold water surrounding everything created a chilling scene. The diver focused on documenting every angle, knowing that these records could be crucial for the ongoing investigation. Working alongside forensic divers, the diver carefully inspected every part of the propeller. They discovered small scratches and marks that suggested a struggle had occurred. It was clear that the body had not ended up there accidentally. The diver's stomach tightened as he thought about the events that might have led to this moment. He realized that the propeller had become a grim hiding place, chosen intentionally to conceal a horrifying secret. Every observation added another layer to the story, and he felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. The divers found more personal effects partially hidden in the crevices of the propeller. A ring, a piece of a torn shirt, and fragments of a notebook were carefully collected. Each item told a small part of a larger story. The diver felt a deep sense of sorrow as he examined the evidence. These items belonged to real people, people whose lives had been disrupted or ended in a terrible way. He thought about the families who had been searching for answers, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. His role in uncovering the truth was vital, and he knew he had to remain focused despite the emotional toll. The diver noticed the skill and care of the forensic team. They moved slowly, methodically, ensuring that every piece of evidence was preserved. He guided them to areas he had noticed during earlier dives, pointing out hidden fragments and subtle marks. The team appreciated his experience and familiarity with the ship, and they worked in close coordination. Together, they began to piece together a clearer picture of what had occurred. The diver realized that this collaborative effort was essential to uncovering the full story and bringing closure to those affected. While underwater, the diver reflected on the dangerous nature of the propeller area. Even with the ship stationary, the structure was imposing, with sharp edges and tight spaces. The risk of injury was high, and the diver remained alert at all times. His movements were deliberate and precise, balancing the need for thorough documentation with the need for personal safety. The physical challenges of the dive were matched only by the emotional strain of confronting the evidence of human suffering and deliberate concealment. As the inspection continued, the diver found additional signs that the body had been manipulated. The positioning suggested that someone had attempted to wedge it securely, perhaps hoping it would remain hidden indefinitely. The diver felt a mix of anger and sadness. The thought that someone had gone to such lengths to cover up a life was deeply unsettling. Yet he also felt a sense of responsibility and determination. He had uncovered this secret, and now it was his duty to help reveal the truth and ensure that justice could be pursued. Back on the boat, the diver recorded every detail in his notebook. He described the new findings, including the scratches, personal items, and the apparent manipulation of the body. The authorities used his notes to plan the next steps in the investigation. Every detail mattered, and the diver understood that his observations could make a significant difference in the outcome. He felt a quiet pride in his role, tempered by the sobering reality of the situation. The discovery was horrifying, but it was also important, and he was committed to seeing the work through. The diver also reflected on the emotional impact of the investigation. Witnessing the aftermath of a deliberate act of concealment was deeply affecting. He had seen death and danger in his work before, but this was different. This was the result of human actions, deliberate and cruel, hidden beneath the water's surface. The diver knew that he would carry the memory of what he had seen for a long time. Yet he also recognized the importance of facing these realities. By confronting them, he was helping to bring light to a dark truth and provide answers to those who had been left in uncertainty. As the dive progressed, The diver assisted in the careful removal of additional evidence. Each item was photographed, documented, and preserved for further analysis. The diver worked steadily, balancing caution with thoroughness. He guided the team through tight spaces and shadowed areas, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. The process was slow and meticulous, but the diver understood that patience was essential. The diver watched as the investigation reached its most critical phase. Authorities had collected evidence, documented the scene, and begun to piece together the events surrounding the horrifying discovery. He stayed close, providing insight and guidance whenever needed. The water around the ship, which had seemed so calm at the surface, carried the weight of secrets that had been hidden for months, maybe years. The diver felt a strange mixture of relief and unease. Relief that the truth was finally being uncovered, and unease because he knew the full implications of what had been hidden beneath the propeller. News of the discovery spread quickly through the maritime community. Crew members, dock workers, and local authorities shared the story with caution and disbelief. The diver found himself at the center of attention, though he did not seek it. He had simply done his job, but his actions had exposed a secret that could no longer be ignored. Families of missing crew members began coming forward, seeking answers, and the diver realized that his careful documentation and observations were crucial to helping them find some measure of closure. The thought of bringing even a small sense of justice to those affected gave him a quiet sense of purpose. As the investigation unfolded, the diver learned more about the hidden patterns of the ship's operations. Previous reports of strange accidents, missing cargo, and unexplained mechanical problems now fit together in a chilling narrative. Someone had taken deliberate steps to conceal these incidents, and the propeller had become a silent witness to a crime that had remained hidden for far too long. The diver thought about the courage it had taken to face the unknown and confront what he had found. He realized that his experience, instincts, and training had made a critical difference in uncovering the truth. Back on the ship, forensic teams continued to examine every detail, from the smallest scratches to the largest fragments of evidence. The diver assisted where he could, pointing out observations that might otherwise have been overlooked. Each piece of evidence was carefully cataloged, photographed, and preserved for further analysis. The diver marveled at the meticulous nature of the work, understanding that patience and precision were essential in unraveling the full story. Every observation, no matter how minor it seemed, had the potential to provide insight into the events that had led to the horrifying discovery. Throughout the process, the diver remained mindful of the emotional impact on everyone involved. Crew members, authorities, and families alike were affected by the revelation of a secret that had been hidden for so long. The diver felt a deep sense of responsibility to ensure that his observations were accurate, his documentation thorough, and his guidance clear. He knew that the truth he had uncovered carried weight beyond the ship itself, influencing the lives of those who had been searching for answers for years. The diver also reflected on the broader significance of the discovery. The ship, once just a routine part of maritime operations, had become a symbol of hidden truths and the lengths to which some would go to conceal them. The discovery of the body attached to the propeller served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unexpected darkness that could lie beneath calm surfaces. The diver understood that his role in bringing this secret to light was not just about uncovering a crime. It was about ensuring that the truth was acknowledged and that those affected could begin to heal. As the investigation progressed, the diver observed the methods used to reconstruct the sequence of events. Investigators analyzed the position of the body, the condition of the propeller, and the scattered personal items to determine how the events had unfolded. The diver provided context based on his first-hand experience, offering insights into the underwater environment, the challenges of moving in tight spaces, and the potential hazards that might have affected the situation. His contributions helped to create a more complete understanding of what had occurred, reinforcing the importance of careful observation and documentation. The diver thought about the families waiting for answers. Each piece of evidence, each observation, brought them closer to understanding the fate of their loved ones. He felt a mixture of sorrow and determination, knowing that his work could help provide closure. The thought of the missing individuals, their lives interrupted and hidden from view, weighed heavily on him. Yet he remained committed to the process, understanding that uncovering the truth required both courage and persistence. Throughout the day, the diver witnessed the emotional toll on the crew and authorities. Some were visibly shaken, grappling with the realization that such a secret had existed on the ship for so long. Others worked quietly, their focus unwavering despite the disturbing nature of the discovery. The diver felt a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose with those around him. Together, they were uncovering a truth that had been deliberately concealed, and each contribution, no matter how small, was essential to the investigation. As night fell, the diver remained on the ship, reflecting on the significance of what had been uncovered. The water that had once represented adventure and exploration now carried the weight of a dark secret. He thought about the courage it had taken to face the unknown, to dive into cold, dark waters with the knowledge that something terrible awaited. He understood that his role had changed. He was no longer just a diver exploring the depths, but a key witness and participant in uncovering a truth that could not be ignored. The diver also considered the technical aspects of the investigation. The propeller, once just a mechanical component, had become a central piece of evidence. Every scratch, dent, and item of debris told a story. The diver's careful observations helped the investigators understand how the body had been placed, how it had been affected by the water, and what evidence had survived over time. He realized that his experience and attention to detail had made a significant difference in piecing together the sequence of events, and he felt a quiet sense of pride in his contributions. As the investigation neared its conclusion, the diver reflected on the emotional journey he had undergone. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and the weight of human cruelty, yet he had also experienced a sense of purpose and responsibility. His actions had helped uncover a truth that had been hidden beneath the surface, providing the opportunity for justice and closure. The diver knew that the experience would stay with him forever, shaping the way he viewed his work, the ocean, and the fragile lives it contained. In the final moments on the ship, the diver took a step back to observe the results of the investigation. Evidence had been collected, conclusions were forming, and families could finally begin to understand what had happened. The diver felt a mixture of relief and somber reflection. The water around the ship was calm, but it would always carry the memory of the secret that had been hidden beneath its surface. The diver had faced the unknown, confronted human cruelty, and played a vital role in revealing the truth. As he prepared to leave, the diver took one last look at the propeller. It was still, silent, and imposing, a reminder of the events that had occurred and the lives that had been affected. He felt a deep sense of responsibility to honor the truth, to continue documenting and observing with care and diligence. The diver understood that the impact of this discovery would be felt for years to come, not only by the families and crew but also by the wider maritime community. Climbing into the boat, the diver allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought about the courage required to face the unknown, the importance of careful observation, and the human stories behind the evidence. He knew that the truth had been uncovered, but he also recognized the lasting emotional impact of what he had witnessed. The diver felt a quiet determination to continue his work with the same dedication, understanding that each discovery, each observation, could make a meaningful difference. As the boat moved away from the ship, the diver looked back at the calm water. The surface was smooth and unbroken, hiding the events that had taken place beneath. He thought about the families who would finally have answers, the crew who had faced fear and uncertainty, and the broader implications of the discovery. The diver understood that his role had been crucial, and he felt a sense of fulfillment in knowing that he had contributed to uncovering a truth that could no longer remain hidden. The experience had changed him, leaving a lasting impression on his mind and heart, a reminder of the power of courage, observation, and human determination. Fragment, no matter how small, could contribute to understanding the full scope of the events. Throughout the dive, the diver remained aware of the psychological weight of the discovery. The presence of the body and the evidence of deliberate concealment created a tension that was hard to shake. He focused on his training, maintaining composure and discipline while acknowledging the emotional strain. The diver understood that facing these challenges was part of his responsibility. By remaining calm and methodical, he could contribute to the investigation and help bring the truth to light. When the dive concluded, the diver surfaced with a sense of exhaustion and relief. The authorities continued their work, and he knew that his observations had provided valuable guidance. He climbed back onto the boat, shivering from the cold and the emotional intensity of the experience. He looked out over the water, reflecting on the events that had unfolded and the significance of the discovery. The diver understood that this was a turning point in the investigation, a moment when hidden truths were being revealed through careful work and unwavering attention. Sitting on the edge of the boat, the diver allowed himself a moment to breathe and process the day. He thought about the families of the missing, the crew, and the broader implications of what had been uncovered. The water around the ship was calm, but it carried the memory of what had been hidden beneath its surface. The diver felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that he had played a crucial role in exposing a horrifying secret. The weight of this responsibility was heavy, but it was accompanied by a sense of purpose and determination. As night approached, the diver remained vigilant. The work was not over, and the investigation would continue long after he had left the water. He reflected on the courage and skill required to face such a challenging and emotionally intense situation. The diver knew that his experience, observations, and careful documentation were essential to understanding the truth and ensuring that justice could be pursued. He felt a quiet resolve knowing that he had done everything possible to uncover and preserve the evidence. The diver's thoughts also turned to the future. The investigation would bring answers, but it would also reveal the depth of human cruelty and secrecy. He understood that his role in uncovering the truth was significant, and he accepted the responsibility with a mix of humility and determination. The water, which had once been a place of exploration and discovery, had revealed a dark secret. The diver had faced fear, uncertainty, and the weight of human suffering, and he had emerged with clarity and purpose. He knew that the impact of this discovery would be felt far beyond the ship and the crew. Reaching the families and communities affected by the tragedy, youths were buried in ways that were both literal and symbolic. The diver also considered the technical challenges of the investigation. The Propeller was a dangerous location, and working in such conditions required skill, patience, and precision. The slightest misstep could disturb evidence or cause injury. He watched as forensic divers worked carefully, using specialized tools to examine every crevice in detail. Each movement was deliberate, and the diver felt a deep respect for their skill and dedication. He knew that uncovering the truth required more than courage. It required patience, attention to detail, and a commitment to accuracy. Throughout the day, the diver observed the process closely. He noted how evidence was cataloged, how items were preserved for analysis, and how the authorities communicated with one another. The methodical nature of the work impressed him, and he felt a sense of responsibility to contribute as much as possible. He guided the divers, pointed out details, and provided insight based on his prior dives. Each piece of information he offered helped to build a clearer picture of what had happened. As night fell, the investigation continued with additional lighting and underwater equipment. The diver felt the weight of the day, both physically and emotionally. The water around the ship seemed darker, more oppressive, as though it carried the memory of the events it had concealed. He thought about the lives that had been lost, the families waiting for answers, and the courage required to face the unknown. He felt a mix of exhaustion and determination, knowing that the work he had begun would continue long into the night. The diver also reflected on his own emotions. He had faced fear before, but this was a different kind of fear. It was the fear of confronting human cruelty, of seeing the consequences of deliberate actions that had been hidden for so long. Yet he also felt a sense of purpose. He had uncovered a truth that could no longer be ignored, a truth that would change the course of the investigation and bring attention to a dark secret that had been buried beneath the water. His role was critical, and he understood the importance of maintaining focus and composure. By the end of the day, the diver had contributed significantly to the investigation. Evidence had been collected, the Propeller thoroughly examined, and initial conclusions forming based on the data. He felt a mixture of relief and unease. Relief that the truth was finally coming to light, and unease because he knew the investigation was far from over. The discovery had revealed a horrifying secret, and the implications would be felt by the crew, the authorities, and the families of those involved. The diver sat quietly on the boat, looking out at the calm water, reflecting on the events of the day, and preparing himself for what the following days would bring. Movement had to be careful, precise, and deliberate. The water was cold, the visibility limited, and the pressure of the situation immense. The diver felt every second acutely, aware that he was part of something that would change many lives. He thought about how easily this secret could have remained hidden forever if he had not been there. It was a sobering thought, and it strengthened his resolve to see the work through to the end. As the dive concluded, the diver surfaced one final time, exhausted and emotionally drained. The authorities continued their work, but he knew that he had played a crucial role in uncovering a truth that had been deliberately concealed. The water around the ship was calm again, but it no longer felt comforting. It had witnessed a terrible secret, and he had been the one to bring it to light. The diver climbed back onto the boat, shivering not just from the cold but from the weight of what he had experienced. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that the investigation would continue long after he had left the water. Sitting on the edge of the boat, he tried to steady his breathing. His mind replayed the dive in vivid detail, the approach to the propeller, the first glimpse of the twisted mass, the personal items scattered in the shadows. Every moment was etched into his memory, and he knew it would stay with him forever. The diver realized that his life had changed in an instant. He had uncovered a secret that someone had tried desperately to hide, and in doing so, he had become part of a story that would shake the ship, the crew, and the maritime community to its core. Even as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the water, the diver could not relax. He remained vigilant, watching the authorities at work, ensuring that nothing was disturbed or overlooked. He understood the importance of this discovery, not just for the investigation, but for the families waiting for answers. The water, once a place of exploration and discovery, had become a silent witness to a horrifying truth. The diver had faced fear, uncertainty, and the weight of responsibility, and he had emerged with clarity. He had seen something no one else had, and he knew that the consequences of that knowledge would ripple far beyond this single dive, spreading among them. No one could believe what he had just found. The diver described the shape, the twisted limbs, and the dark fabric that clung to the propeller. The captain's face grew pale, and he motioned for the authorities to be contacted immediately. This was no longer a routine inspection. It was something far more serious. While waiting for the authorities, the diver stayed close to the edge of the boat, unable to shake the image of what he had seen. The water, once familiar and comforting, now seemed dark and menacing. He thought about the people who might have gone missing, whose lives had ended in this hidden, terrible way. He felt a deep sadness and a growing sense of responsibility. He had uncovered something that could finally provide answers, but it was also a reminder of how fragile and unpredictable life could be. The diver remembered the stories he had heard about the ship. Crew members had vanished, cargo had gone missing, and strange noises had been reported near the propeller during past maintenance checks. Some had laughed off these tales, attributing them to superstition or exaggeration. Now, with the horrifying proof before him, he realized the truth was far darker. The ship had been carrying secrets for months, maybe years, and he had stumbled upon them by chance. He thought about his family and friends, wondering how he would explain the discovery without causing panic. The diver had always been careful in his work, meticulous in his inspections and cautious in his approach. But nothing could have prepared him for this. He had seen accidents, shipwrecks, and dangerous conditions, but never a deliberate hiding of a human life in such a gruesome way. The experience left a mark on him, a memory that would not fade no matter how many dives he completed in the future. As the authorities arrived and began prep,